What's up and welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are enjoying the content lately. With the NHL regular season pretty much being over at this point and the playoff picture almost being set, I thought it would be fun to go through my top 25 players that are currently in the NHL. Now this is going to be based on past performances and this year, not just solely how well some players have performed this year. So miss me with those Reinhart and potentially Hyman picks. They are nice honorable mentions, but they're not going to be included on my list. Now we're going to start off with 5 individuals and then explain why I have them on my list, and then go through the next 5 until we reach number 1. So if you guys have been enjoying the content lately, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's free and you guys get to see more fun videos like this, and let's get right into it. Coming in at number 25, JT Miller. At 24, Braden Point. 23, Sebastian Aho. 22, William Nylander, and 21, Mitch Marner. Now, starting off with the bottom, I think that JT Miller deserves a lot of credit, not just for how well he's performed this season, but just for how well he's played on the Canucks over the past few years. He's been one of their biggest offensive pieces, and I know people don't really care too much about him because he's not the biggest name, but playing in a market like that and being such a pivotal piece to their offense, I think he deserves to be in the top 25 at this point. Braden Point at 24, obviously he deserves a top mention. I think people sleep on him because of, the stars that are over in Tampa Bay, Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, Vasilevsky. By the time you even come around to Point, he's number 5 on that team, which just kind of shows you how great the Lightning really are with their roster. But giving it to Braden Point, I think this guy's fantastic. 51 goals last year, a crucial piece to their offense this year, and I think he's an underrated two-way center in this league. Give Braden Point a top 25 nod. He definitely deserves it at this point. At 23, it's Sebastian Aho. Again, I know you guys may not think he deserves to be on this list, but I think Aho has really grown into one of the top centers in the NHL today. This guy comes up time and time again for the Carolina Hurricanes. I think all that's really missing from his game is a long playoff run where he is leading the Carolina Hurricanes to the Cup. I think this will be his best year. He's playing alongside guys like Jake Guentzel, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Andrei Svechnikov, just list of players. He's got some talent around them, and it's showing in his point production this year. So he belongs in the top 25 at this point. At 22, I have Willie Stiles. Now, I know some of you guys may be upset with the fact that I have him below Mitch Marner, but let me explain this a little bit, okay? I think Mitch Marner, who comes in at 21, is actually just a better all-around playmaker and really improves the play of his line mates. Whereas William Nylander, I feel like he's more of an individual offensive playmaker where he creates his own goals and his own plays, but doesn't really improve the play of his line mates. Not that I see from it the way Mitch Marner does. So to me, I have Mitch Marner just slightly above, but both of these two guys have been really, really excellent for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Again, similar to Aho, I feel like their playoff drought has kind of been their biggest knock, but with the way they're performing this year, if Toronto can really go deep in the playoffs, I think a lot more people will have these guys on their top 25 list because they really deserve it. They're making that money in Toronto, and hopefully they can continue to prove their excellence while they're playing with the Maple Leafs. Now let's get into my next 5 from 20 through 16. At number 20, I have Jason Robertson, and get ready, we have a few goalies coming up next. Ilya Sorokin at number 19, Connor Hellebuyck at 18, Igor Shesterkin at 17, and at number 16, I have Kirill Kaprizov. Now let's start with Jason Robertson. Last year was his breakout year, over 100 points, a goal-scoring machine, and this year it feels like he's taken on a lesser role to really just produce more for his team. If you look through that Dallas Stars lineup, they are getting points from almost every player in their top 6, and even beyond that, their third line is scary good. And Jason Robertson taking a step back feels more like a team play rather than an individual effort. Don't get me wrong, he's still a point-per-game player and is still fantastic, which is why I have him so high on this list. But based on last season and this year having a little bit of a down year, I think he deserves to be in the top 20, just not the top 15 at this point. Now let's segue into the next couple players, which are goalies, something I kind of thought about not including on this list, but they're so important to their teams nowadays that I feel like we just need to talk about the big game-changing goalies on these rosters. 19, I had Ilya Sorokin. Sorokin is having a down year, but if you take him off that New York Islanders team, they are not even sniffing a wild card spot, let alone a playoff spot in general. This guy is a game changer for that team. He deserves that contract, and I think some people might consider him to be the best goalie in the NHL. Now, I don't believe that. I think he's top 3. I mean, you could argue with me, but I think that he still belongs in a top 25 list if you're talking about goalies. Leading into my next guy, a Vezina nominee this year, Connor Hellebuyck. Now, Hellebuyck, to me, I don't think he's the best goalie in the NHL. I'm saving that spot for Igor Shesterkin, who comes in right above Hellebuyck. These two to me are interchangeable as the top goalie in the NHL. They not only improve their entire team, but they make such a big difference with their rosters that without these two guys, I don't even know where these teams would be today. Now, granted, Igor Shesterkin has had a little bit of a down year for the first half, but take a look at his numbers after the All-Star break, and without a doubt, you can see that this is the Igor Shesterkin that we all know and love. While Connor Hellebuyck, yes, he's been more consistent this year, but over a longer stretch, I just think that Igor Shesterkin has a bit more talent on his side than Connor Hellebuyck. Either way, Connor Hellebuyck, Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin, those three belong on my top 25 list if I'm talking about goalies. A couple honorable mention guys. I was considering Linus Ullmark, UC Saros, Jeremy Swayman, and Jay Gottinger, but when you have such a tight list like this, you got to exclude some people on the list. So they just missed, but hey, they get an honorable mention here. Now, this leads to my final player in this part of my list, Kirill Kaprizov. Now, when we're talking about dynamic forwards who create their own offense, I don't know if there's another player who's better at this than Kirill Kaprizov. This guy was a hidden gem in his draft class and has just completely exceeded expectations since coming in the league. His goal scoring ability is top notch. The way he improves the play of his line mate is just out of this world, and I think Kirill deserves a lot more credit for any success that Minnesota will see in the future. Obviously, they're having a down year, but I think that's more from their cap situation than it is the play of their players. Kirill's having a great year, and I do think he belongs in the top 25. He's just out of my top 15, which kind of segues into my next 5 on this list. Coming in at number 15, we have Miro Heiskanen. At 14, Mikko Rantanen. At 13, Elias Pettersson. At number 12, Matthew Tkachuk. And at number 11, Quinn Hughes. Now, a couple of these guys, I'm sure you guys will all be upset that they're not in the top 10, but sort of let me explain this here. At number 15, Miro Heiskanen. I mean, I'm such a big Heiskanen guy. I think this guy belongs on any top 15 list. I had a hard time excluding him from this. Best defender on the Dallas Stars, arguably a top 3 defenseman in the NHL today. The way he can skate, it's just incomparable. The way he can create offense for that team from the blue line is something that's really underestimated with this team. I think without Heiskanen, the Dallas Stars aren't even sniffing the top of their division. He's the heart of that defense, and I just think he's such a great player for that Stars team. At 14, Mikko Rantanen, maybe the most underrated player in the league. He definitely belongs in the top 15. Back-to-back 100-point seasons, back-to-back 40-plus goal seasons, and even though some people call him a McKinnon merchant, I just think at this point, he's easily one of the best players in the NHL. Take away McKinnon, and you can still see this guy excels in his role. He creates offense for that team, and when Colorado has had some droughts this year, Rantanen has really been the offensive prowess for this team, keeping them afloat in that division. If you don't have Rantanen in your top 15 at this point, I don't know what you're doing. This guy is a stud and will probably have 3 back-to-back 100-point seasons if he can continue like this next year. At number 13, Elias Pettersson. Like I talked about last year, I just think that Elias Pettersson has one of the best all-around games in the NHL. His defense, top-notch. I would argue that he belongs in the Selke category this year, along with the offense that he creates for the Vancouver Canucks. Without him, this team is not the team that they are this year. He's their franchise player. He just got paid like one, and I just think Elias Pettersson is one of the best centers in the world. Put him in the top 5 for me if you really want to argue. At number 12, Matthew Tkachuk. Having a little bit of a down year compared to last year, but he has picked it up in the second half of the season. Matthew Tkachuk, he has that intangible that a lot of players don't have. The grit, the spunk, the offense, the way he rallies around his players, and just honestly one of the biggest rats in the NHL. It was really hard for me to keep Matthew Tkachuk out of my top 10. I just think that the stuff he brings on ice, the way he makes his Panthers team just 10 times better, and the way he performed in last year's playoffs really just puts him in such a high tier for me. But I have him just outside the top 10. I think he's great, and I think he's going to be fantastic in the playoffs this year. Leading to my next person in this 5 list, which is Quinn Hughes. The Norris Trophy winner, in my opinion, this year. Quinn has really taken his game to the next level. Not only is he great offensively, but he's really stepped it up defensively for the Canucks. Him and Hronek have just been so good for that Vancouver blue line this year. And if he doesn't win the Norris, I feel like it's going to be a little bit upsetting to Vancouver, but he will at least finish in the top 3 alongside maybe Cale Makar and a guy like Roman Josi. Now let's get into my top 10. I'm just going to read this whole thing off, and most of these you probably would assume are already in the top 10, but let's just get it started. At number 10, Jack Hughes. At number 9, Adam Fox. At number 8, Artemi Panarin. Number 7, Leon Draisaitl. Number 6, David Pastrnak. Number 5, Nikita Kucherov. Number 4, Cale Makar. Number 3, Auston Matthews. Number 2, Nathan MacKinnon. And number 1, Connor McDavid. Now, starting at 10, Jack Hughes. Obviously, Jack Hughes is going to be in my top 10. This kid is phenomenal, and he's still so young, putting up some great numbers. Take away his injury. If you looked at Jack Hughes' numbers at the start of this year, I would have had him as my Hart Trophy favorite. The way he was performing in such a great, dynamic New Jersey offense, even though they're going to miss the playoffs, I think this team, they will be so great for years to come. Just give Jack Hughes a few years, and I guarantee you this kid's going to already have like 2 Hart Trophies under his belt. Coming in at number 9, Adam Fox. Adam Fox is the second best defenseman in the NHL. I think the way I rank it, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Quinn Hughes, Miro Heiskanen. Those are the guys that I put in that upper echelon. You can move them around if you want. But Adam Fox, his offense, the way he just casually has 70-plus point seasons, the way he controls the blue line for the New York Rangers and just overall improves their offensive system, is just something that you can't really comprehend. He belongs in the top 10. I don't care if people have him lower. That's how highly I am on Adam Fox. Coming in up next is his teammate Artemi Panarin. The bread man just continues to be better and better every year. And some people may have him lower because of his playoff performance last year, but I just feel like at this point, Artemi Panarin is one of the best playmaking wingers in the NHL. I know people think he's overrated based on the contract that the Rangers gave him, but honestly, without the bread man, where are the Rangers this year? Do you even feel like they would be in a top division spot without him? They might win the President's Trophy, and it's all based on his performance this year. The bread man belongs in the top 10 in my opinion. Up next, Leon Draisaitl. Maybe this is a little bit low. Maybe you guys have him higher than a couple of the other guys that I put him under. But I just think that Leon Draisaitl, he's a great complete player playing alongside one of the most talented players in NHL history. He continues to excel, has 100-point seasons for the past like 3 or 4 years. There's not much you can say else about Leon Draisaitl. At this point, I feel like it's not a knock on his game, but just giving credit to some of the other guys who have really exceeded over the past few years. Leading into my next guy, David Pastrnak. No one has more goals than Pastrnak over the past 365 days. He has 40-plus goals this season, 60-plus last year. Continues to be the offensive prowess for that Bruins team. He has like 40 points more than the next guy on his team right now. He should be a consideration for the Hart Trophy just for how well he's kept the Bruins afloat this year, which is why I have him just a bit higher than Draisaitl. I just love his game and think that his goal-scoring ability is top-notch, arguably one of the best in the NHL today. At number 5, I had Nikita Kucherov. Now, I know people might be upset by this. Sure, Kucherov gets underrated a lot, and yeah, he should be a consideration for the Hart Trophy this year, but when we're talking about players in the top 5, really you could move any of these guys around, and I don't think anybody would be unhappy with it. This guy, fantastic. Obviously, I think he deserves the MVP nod this year. The way he's continued to carry the Lightning, getting them into the playoffs, even with some of the injuries they dealt with, like the Vasilevsky one at the start of the year. He's hands down the best player on that Lightning team, and without him, I don't think they're in the playoffs. That's not even a stretch to say. Coming in at number 4, Cale Makar. Look, I just think this guy's like the best defenseman the NHL has ever seen. His skating ability is just so fun to watch. The way he carries the puck, it's like watching a play. He's just deciding everything that happens and controls all of the pressure that happens in his offensive and defensive end. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about Cale Makar. I know everybody loves his game, and I think he may just win another Norris Trophy this year. That's how well he's played, and even with Quinn Hughes having just a few more points, without Cale Makar, who knows what the Avalanche would be doing at this point, or if they would have even won their Stanley Cup a few years ago. At number 3, I have Auston Matthews. I really considered putting Matthews at number 2. If MacKinnon wasn't having the year that he's having this year, just continuing to grow in his game and becoming one of the best players in the NHL, then I probably would have put Matthews at 2, but this year, 64 goals, has the chance to break 70, had 60 goals a few years ago. In my opinion, he's the greatest goal scorer in NHL history and will most likely pass Alex Ovechkin at some point. You can't argue with me at this point. Yeah, he doesn't get a lot of assists, but who cares? When you're scoring at that rate, I want you on my roster any day of the week. Leading into my number 2, Nathan MacKinnon. I just think that at this point, MacKinnon might just be the best player in hockey. Obviously, you can't put him over Connor McDavid. When it comes to those two, Connor McDavid, his play style is just ridiculous. The way he's brought the Oilers back to life this year compared to MacKinnon, who, I mean, you could say that he's the biggest reason for the Colorado Avalanche, but they also have two other guys like Rantanen and Makar who are just really elevating that squad as well. It's not a knock on McKinnon. I think we all just can agree that Connor McDavid's top-end talent is just a little bit better than McKinnon. But I don't know, man. McKinnon is really closing that gap for me. He is such a fun player to watch, and obviously those two belong in the top two spots for me. But let me know what you guys think about my top 25 NHL players list. Comment who you think was left off this list that belongs in the top 25, and who you would move around on my list. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I will see you guys in the next one.